So being 6 o'clock on Monday, March 16th, I'm going to call to order the Winooski Liquor Control Meeting. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilor Mike Myers.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Liberty, justice for all.
So on the Liquor Control Meeting agenda, we have 2 items for approval. The first is second-class liquor license 2020 renewals for Walgreens, 321 Main Street. And the second is first-class liquor license 2020 renewals for Asian Bistro, McKee's, Southern Smoke Foods, and the RVA. Any comments from staff?
We have no concerns with any of these renewals.
Any questions or comments from council? No public comment? So I would entertain a motion to approve both the second, can I do them together in this one? Yeah. Both the second-class liquor license 2020 renewals and the first-class liquor license 2020 renewals.
Second.
Did someone do a motion?
So moved.
Who?
Amy and Jim and Hal, can you hear Christine?
Yeah, a little muffled, but yeah, I can hear.
Can I have a motion to approve the liquor license renewals?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay. Motion by Amy, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. That brings us to the end of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Hal. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carries. All right. So let's transition to our city council meeting. I will call to order the regular meeting of the Winooski City Council. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the
United States of
flag,
America,
United States of
and to the
America,
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
So our first item on the agenda is agenda review. I believe there is a request from staff to table regular item D, discussion on transportation impact fees, to the April 20th meeting.
Yeah, so this is a project we've been working on for about a year. A consultant was going to come in and present the final report to us. It is a new initiative for the city, potentially a new thing, and in the interest of wanting to kind of put off some policy discussions until the public feels like they can fully participate in the decision and in the information gathering, there's no urgency to this, so we recommend pushing it off to the April 20th meeting.
Are there any concerns from council? All right. This does not require a vote, correct? Or does it?
I would vote to remove it and reschedule it.
Can I have a motion to remove item D, discussion on transportation impact fees, and reschedule for April?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Public comments? All right, so if you all can't see, there's no one here. Outside of staff. So the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have our council minutes of March 9, 2020, and payroll warrant 29 to 222, and quarterly 223 to 307, and subsequent to payout warrant ending December and January, and accounts payable warrant ending March 11. Are there any questions or concerns about the consent agenda? So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Council reports. Can I start with Hal?
What was that again?
Can I start with you for council reports?
Well, the only report I have is what I shared with the council and Jesse about a recent bill that was passed last Friday in the legislature. So it's a summary on how the state is preparing to react in a state of emergency. And the goal of it is to make sure that Vermonters who are impacted by the coronavirus, as well as businesses, are given an opportunity to get the most expeditious support and resources to mitigate it. So that's all I really have. That's been our focus for the last several days in the legislature. And I just wanted to share that with all of you.
Thank you, Hal.
And I also posted it on Front Porch Forum as well, a similar summary, so that our citizens can get a grasp of what the state is preparing to offer.
Thank you. Amy?
You're welcome.
Sorry. Amy, anything for your report?
There was some news that came out of downtown Winooski today, but I think that Jessie is going to be covering it in her city update, so I will just defer to her.
Jim, anything from you?
A lot has happened since we were last together in my world. So I attended the Working Communities kickoff meeting last Thursday, learning a lot about their grant programs and housing needs in other communities. And they've pushed back their deadline for application for the final grant. I'm sure Jesse will speak a little bit more about this. So we're being accommodated on scheduling related to coronavirus there. There was a meeting of the Winooski Tree Advisory Committee, which I attended. They're preparing to develop an Arbor Day celebration on May 2nd at 10 a.m., presuming that we can hold it. That's the plan. They're looking at adding a workshop component, and we did get the grant for caring for the canopy, so there's a plan to try and plant all 4 trees that day if we can get some volunteer help from AmeriCorps. And there was a plan to make some recommendations to the Municipal Infrastructure Commission this coming Thursday based on Emerald Ash Borer action planning and the results of last year's inventory, but that will be delayed for the time being. The Charter Change Commission met on February 25th and discussed outreach plans and finalized a fact sheet for the proposed charter change language around all resident voting. They distributed over 400 fact sheets at town meeting day, so it was, I think, a good opportunity for outreach in the community and answered a lot of questions. And the commission chair is working on getting an entry in the newsletter to accompany the fact sheet, so doing some more outreach. They have planned a lot of one-on-one or group meetings. We'll try other tacks to get that information out there in different formats. Finally, I did attend the Housing Commission meeting last month, which reviewed additional data on gentrification and finding no indicators of concern either in the mix of affordability or trends that signal gentrification. The Commission is also looking at how some of the information in the rental registry could be used to inform policy tools for improving life safety compliance. That's an area that they're going to be investigating more. And finally, there were some more Winooski Housing Authority meetings scheduled, but those have been pushed back as well.
Thank you. Mike?
I'd like to thank everyone that came out and voted on town meeting day. I'm excited to be reelected and to have this continue on. The work's not done yet, and we have a lot of good stuff going on in Winooski. I also want to make sure that, I hope Winooski residents stay safe at this time and use common sense and common decency when they're approaching their neighbors or anyone in need. It's a weird time we're living in now, and the help's out there. If you need it, you can contact, I believe, City Hall if people have any questions on this, or the counselors.
Thank you. Yeah, so town meeting day. thank residents for supporting our budget at 69% it passed by. So that's, I think, pretty good for city budgets. We also had, I believe, 43% voter turnout, which is excellent. 25 is average nationwide. So it was a good showing. I was able to meet with the Mayor's Coalition, so the mayors of the other 7 cities with mayors in Vermont. We held a press conference at the State House supporting a shared agenda, so it takes six mayors' approval to put anything on the shared coalition agenda. We were there to support TIF districts, Act 250 revisions, local options tax on commercial cannabis, and support for weatherization funding. Last week, I was able to attend Finance, Planning, and Safe, Healthy, Connected Commissions. The Finance Commission had a discussion about affordability in Winooski. Just looking at data and affordability models, no decisions were made yet. Safe, Healthy, Connected Commission reviewed a presentation from a group of users of the skate park at Landry Park about potential improvements there. And the commission was able to advise them on a process of prioritizing and seeking outside funding. And the Planning Commission continued discussion about form-based code and potentially came to I want to be careful how I phrase this. They were discussing setbacks in form-based code on our gateway zoning and gave our zoning administrator sort of a range of changes to run by other professionals and bring back for future considerations to see if it's a change that they would want to bring to a public hearing and to council in the future. I joined Jesse and other staff, other leaders in the community this morning to talk about different ways that we are addressing planning and supporting the community in light of the COVID-19 situation. Jesse will speak to that further in our city updates, but I did want to recognize a lot of work has already gone in from staff and from other members of the community and these other organizations trying to kind of address something that's coming about very rapidly and just share appreciation for the effort that you all are putting in. So with that, I will turn it over to you for city updates.
Great. Turn this back around. You guys can see me up close. So we wanted to use city updates tonight to give you a comprehensive overview of where we currently stand as a city in reaction to COVID-19. We have our leadership team, Chief Audie is the emergency management coordinator, and myself have spent many, many hours in the last week or so planning for this. So I'm going to try not to read, but just go down a whole list of what our current status is. We are also doing a Facebook Live chat of this conversation in the interest of getting it out to the community as comprehensively as possible. So by way of introduction, I want to start with the fact that the Vermont Department of Health remains the primary source of information for health information related to COVID-19. We are not the primary source if people have questions about their health or their well-being or their family. Please visit healthvermont.gov. Our primary goal is to maintain the health and safety of our residents and our community, and we have broad authority to do this under Title 24 of Vermont State Statute. So as a municipality, in order to protect the public's health, there are a lot of things we can do to ensure that that is maintained. As a staff, we also want to acknowledge that we are in quite a position of privilege through this crisis in that we have good paying jobs that we are likely to maintain through this crisis. We have excellent medical benefits thanks to the community. And in exchange for those privileges, we have an obligation to ensure that essential services for the community continues. And primarily when I talk about essential services, I mean access to clean water, a wastewater treatment system that's operating effectively, municipal infrastructure, and public safety. So we are committed to maintaining those as we move forward. So as Chief Audie and leadership team and myself have stayed up to date on updates, we have made a series of decisions. I'm going to walk through those with you now. with the huge caveat that these are decisions as of right now. This is changing hour by hour, and so very well, we may make a different set of decisions tomorrow. But this is where we are today. So, as I said, all essential services remain open and available to the community, and will continue without interruption. Municipal services in the city clerk's office, we'd really like to encourage people as much as possible to do business with the city online. You can register for programs online, pay utility and property tax bills online. Please visit our website and do as much of that from home as possible. In the interest of flattening the curve, social distancing, and protecting that safe space, we are starting today limiting folks to only two folks at a time in our vault. Our vault houses all of our property records and our vital records, our marriage licenses and birth certificates. Often we have paralegals, lawyers in there doing title searches. We're trying not to discontinue that given the reality of the market right now. But in order to keep distance, we are going to limit it to 2 people on a first come, first served basis. If there's more than 2 people here, we'll have them wait to go back into the vault. Starting today, we're also suspending all non-essential inspections for the foreseeable future, so primarily through our rental registry. We will continue to do housing complaints, to do any health complaint inspections, but regular inspections we're suspending at this point in time. As we are currently operating most of our public-facing facilities, we have up the sanitation measures. We are, not only is our staff on an hourly basis sanitizing those first touch locations, on a daily basis we're also doing that comprehensively across all of our facilities. We are, in terms of your meetings right now will continue unless we notice otherwise. We have invested in this Zoom account. We are using it multiple times a day for multiple meetings, and we will continue that. Having said that, our policy boards are in our infrastructure commission, Safe, Healthy, Connected People, housing, finance, charter, thank you, are all suspended through April 15th at the earliest. So those groups will not be meeting. The Development Review Board does have a meeting scheduled for this Thursday with 2 hearings noticed. That meeting will be convened for the sole purpose of rescheduling that hearing to April 16th. Yes. So there won't be any public testimony taken at that meeting. As the community's probably heard, schools across the state will close effective Wednesday. Thrive is continuing to operate. It operated today and will operate tomorrow. It will likely not operate as is moving forward, although we are still in communications with the superintendent to try and figure out if there is an option for moving that forward. For Thrive families, we have already credited their accounts for those days that they will miss that service. So those are already applied online to their accounts. As of today, we are canceling all programming in the O'Brien Community Center, including North End Studios. The building will be closed. By appointment plans with UVMMC, with North End, and with the Howard Center will continue, but by appointment only, and somebody will be met at the door and brought back into the building. As of today as well, the library is closed to the public. We are continuing to provide our curbside and home delivery service, so if folks are interested in reading materials or materials for their children, please call the library at 802-655-6424. Again, that's 655-6424, or email the library. This is all also in our city update. Today, in partnership with Downtown Winooski, we did suspend all parking enforcement for on-street parking in our downtown. Since we actually broke up this list, the governor has announced that all bars and restaurants will be closed as of 2 p.m. tomorrow. However, they will be allowed to stay open for delivery and to-go options. So we really wanted to ensure that our residents had a close, convenient location that they could go and support the downtown business community. This is going to be really hard on some of our small businesses. So we are suspending that coverage of on-street parking. We will still be enforcing in the garage at this time. The food shelf, on our leadership call this morning, the food shelf is continuing to operate, and there's a lot of information online about how to best support them, and we encourage folks to do that. And finally, externally facing, we have received a lot of calls and emails about folks wanting to give back to their community, and we're so incredibly thankful for that, and incredibly thankful that the community is really coming out for one another. To that end, we've put up on our website a very abbreviated volunteer application form where people can indicate who they are, what they're interested in, their contact information. We'll be collecting all of those and then working with our partners to make use of those folks to the best ability we can moving forward. So those are all the external facing status. I do want to highlight a few things we're doing internally for the council, just so you know where we are. So as the mayor mentioned earlier this morning, we started what we're calling a Winooski leadership call. This is a call of about 20 executives from across the city, from business community, faith leaders, big property owners, to coordinate what is happening, what they're doing within their organizations to make sure that they are up to date on city information, and potentially moving forward get to a place where we are sharing resources. This is a CDC best practice and something that we will be sure happens moving forward. This morning we also had an all-staff meeting to hear from our staff about their questions and concerns and share these updates with them. While we are likely not to have another all-staff meeting, we are doing daily updates to the staff as well, so they know what is happening and we can get them information they need quickly. We have moved our leadership team meetings to weekly, although at this rate we are meeting daily, so we'll see how that goes over time. With the big technology transition we made last year, we invested in technology that allows the entire leadership team and several middle managers to be able to work from anywhere. So our management team is poised and ready to not be here, but be off-site, but managing those essential services. We have waived our current sick leave policy that you previously had adopted, or our past council had adopted, that limits folks' ability to take accrued time during their probationary period. We're really trying to undo that and say to folks, if you are sick, please use your time, do not come into, don't come into work. As I mentioned, we purchased our Zoom account, and I'll be working with the mayor over the next couple of weeks to figure out what are the policy decisions that are emergent that we need to continue to have conversations about, and what can we delay until there's a better public process in place. Again, this is said with a huge caveat that this is as of right now, and things will change tomorrow and tomorrow again. So please look at, Paul has built out a COVID-19 page on our website that's linked on the top banner of every page of our website. Go back there. We will be posting daily updates there. It will also be pushed out through our social media accounts, Twitter, and Front Porch Forum. And with that, I know it's untraditional for city updates, but I do want to give you all time to ask any questions if you have them as well.
Hey, Jesse, this is Amy. First, I just want to recognize what an incredible amount of work that all is, and thank you and your staff for staying on top of this, keeping us all healthy and safe. Acknowledging that the governor has issued the closure of bars and restaurants tomorrow at 2, and the fact that it is St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. Traditionally, people start drinking very early in the morning at certain locations. Is there anything that we can do to kind of proactively encourage those places to consider closing earlier than 2?
So Chief Audie has been in touch specifically with McKees throughout the day today about their plans. They're being very cooperative. I think their intent right now is to remain open until 2 o'clock. You know, they have their own business decisions that they're making about staffing and revenue and whatnot. But we have, as I said, have been in close touch with them and will continue to be throughout tomorrow. At this point, I'm not inclined to force a decision outside of what the governor has recommended.
Thank you.
Hello, Jesse, this is Hal. I'm just wondering, how have we been reaching out to our New American community so that they're on top of this and reaching out through their conduits that represent them so that we're all on the same page about reacting to this virus?
That's a great question, Hal. So we have a couple of things. We have included AALV and VRRP in our Winooski leadership meeting calls, the meeting we had this morning. We are also, as well as faith leaders throughout the community, in the hopes that those folks can get to some of our residents who may not otherwise be engaged in some of our media channels. We've also, quite honestly, heavily relied on the homeschool liaisons, the community liaisons at the school. They've been doing an exceptional job getting out messages about what's going on at the school, and we've asked them to include the city updates in those messages as well.
Excellent, and thanks for your leadership.
No more questions? We will move on then to our regular items. The first item on the agenda is for approval. This is the appointment of deputy mayor. So I would like to retain Councilor Colston as deputy mayor. We'll have to take a vote on that. Are there any questions or concerns from the public? Can I have a motion then to approve appointing Councilor Colston to deputy mayor? Motion by Jim.
Second?
Second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thanks, deputy mayor.
Thank you.
Our next item is also for approval. This is our mayor and council procedures policy.
So just quickly by way of update, this is pretty much the exact same policy as you adopted last year. It's based on the model policy that's put out by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and really codifies what we are currently doing as a governance organization, also follows our charter. I did make 2 updates to this document from the last procedures manual, or procedures policy. One was clarifying the language that is in state charter about one person being present for a virtual meeting. That the state law is very clear that does not necessarily need to be an elected official, it can be a staff person. So we changed that in this policy. Secondly, the section article 12, in last year's policy, it referred to liaisons to organizational structures within city government with the reconfiguration of the commission structure and now having liaisons report to the commission or liaise to the commissions. I just changed that wording slightly. But other than that, it is the same policy that you adopted last year.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Jim? You're on mute.
So. 1.
There you go. Wow, I even voted without being unmuted. Sorry about that. The one piece I noticed is that I think last time we made a change about where we're posting materials, and section 5 looks like the old version, where section 4 looks like the new version. So I was just going to ask if we could change section 5, subsection B, to match what's in section 4, which is that we'll post in City Hall, the Winooski School District, and at the Winooski Library. And we will also endeavor to post at TD Bank and the O'Brien Community Center. And that's the wording that is in section 4, section B, subsection B.
So 4B and 5B need aligning?
Yes. And 4B is what we, I think, discussed last year with an expanded list of places and attempting to post at additional places.
That's right.
Thanks.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from the public? So can I have a motion to approve the mayor and council procedures policy with the suggested update to section 5B?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item C, conflict of interest policy.
So again, this is actually the exact same policy you adopted last year. Again, built around the Vermont League of Cities and Towns model policy. Just by way of kind of further expounding for the public and the council, what this policy is really intended to do is articulate how the council defines a conflict of interest, and then codify how we use that in our day-to-day governance work. It is also a charter requirement that you have such a policy. So to be specific about that, in this particular venue, a conflict of interest is defined by direct or indirect personal or financial interest of you or somebody in your household or a business associate or an employer that you are positively impacted by taking a action as a city councillor. This could also include any ex parte communications you have with a party in a quasi-judicial decision you are making. So that's how conflict of interest is defined. So basically, if you or your business or your community or your family are going to personally benefit or financially benefit, you are to disclose that conflict to the full council and take yourself out of the conversation in regards to whatever that conflict is. So just wanted to be clear about what was being discussed in this policy. And again, it is the same document that you supported last year.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Questions from the public? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the conflict of interest policy.
So
So
moved.
moved. Hal.
Second.
Motion by Hal, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carries. Thank you. Next up is our council schedule for approval.
Great. I should have prefaced all of these items by saying that as this is your first official meeting post-town meeting day, we are doing our organizational efforts of the year. So the schedule is presented, outlines the previous agreed to council schedule of the first and third Mondays of the month. There are some exceptions as noted in this schedule that I'll call out quickly. We are asking you to have a short meeting on June 25th, which is a Thursday, to set the tax rate once the grand list is lodged. We are then going down to one council meeting in July and one council meeting in August. And then the one council meeting in November because of the Thanksgiving holiday. And then we've outlined the budget process where we ramp up and go weekly in January. A couple of other dates to call to your attention right now, although this could change given our state of our world at the moment. We are hoping to have another policy and strategies retreat with you in May or June. The Memorial Day Parade is May 23rd as of right now. The primary election is August 11th with Bennington Battle Day on the 17th. And those, I think, are all the things I wanted to call your attention to in this schedule.
And I would say too, this is only 2 meetings in December versus I think this year we did 3. Any questions, concerns from council?
I noticed that the primary is listed on the schedule, but the general election is not on November 3rd, and just wondered, should we put that on?
Sure. Happy to do that.
Any other questions? Questions from the public? So I would entertain a motion to approve the council schedule with the addition of the general election date.
So moved.
Did I?
No, there.
I heard, okay. Motion by Mike, second by Jim. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries, thank you.
This is outside our policy to give thumbs up.
It seems quite affirmative to me. Also, he is the one who made the motion. So next is item E. This is for approval. This is appointment of library commissioners. Ray Coffey has joined us.
All right, so not surprisingly, we advised all four of these folks not to join us tonight. Jessica Wignall, who's one of our new recommended appointees, is on the phone. So Jessica, thank you for being here virtually. But we have some reappointments to take care of here for 2 returning members, and then have 2 new applicants who have expressed interest and who we would love to bring on board. Because we had some terms that expired at the end of the summer, we are going to recommend here some staggering of terms per the library governance documents, just to get back on that 3-year cycle with folks. So we have 2 folks for reappointment, Prudence Doherty and Aurora Hurd for 3 years, and then our 2 new applicants, Jessica Morley and Jessica Wignall, for 2-year terms. The logic there is that Prudence and Aurora have liked us well enough to say they will come back again, so the chances that they stick around for 3 years are probably pretty good. I have nothing but the utmost confidence that Jessica's will also love us, but just wanted to give them a chance to have a shorter term up front. So, yeah, so we are recommending this slate, and this will get us back up to a quorum, which is great because we have been absent of that for a time.
Thank you. Jessica, if you would like to make a statement, please, you're welcome to.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it. I imagine that we will enjoy it. But yeah, no, I'm really excited about it. I think the application, asked about why this would be of interest, and I think as a member of the community, I'm really looking forward to a way to give back to the community. I think the library is a very valuable resource. I'm really excited about what it does for Winooski citizens, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, thank you for offering your time and capacity to help support in this role. Are there any questions from council? Any questions from the public? So I would entertain a motion to approve the appointment of the library commissioners.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries, thank you. So, next on the agenda, a public hearing has been noticed for the consideration of zoning change on parking. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing to discuss Unified Land Use and Development Regulations Amendment Parking Waiver. And our zoning administrator will join us.
Yes, thank you very much. So this is a public hearing that you scheduled at your February 18th meeting to consider public comments on a parking waiver. This is new language that we are proposing for the Unified Land Use and Development Regulations to identify an option to accommodate uses that are not currently listed in our regulations, to establish what their minimum parking requirements would be, but also to provide an outlet for additional relief from the parking minimums beyond what is currently listed in our regulations. That process would require an applicant to go before the Development Review Board and also prepare, prepare some transportation demand management planning studies to take forward as well. So this amendment outlines the process that would be followed going forward to the Development Review Board for that process. We have this scheduled tonight for a public hearing. The Planning Commission, in their discussions of this amendment before it was forwarded to you all, they did have a lot of comments and spent some time discussing it. So at their meeting last week, we gave them an opportunity to spend some additional time to discuss the amendment and bring forward any comments or concerns that they had. Two of the items that they just wanted to reiterate specifically were that the noticing of any waivers requests going forward to the Development Review Board, how that would be done, and making sure that the adjacent property owners were properly noticed and were informed of those actions, and also just general concerns about how the waiver may impact the adjacent neighborhoods. So given the current state of the environment, we have this on the agenda for a public hearing tonight, but are also recommending you hold an additional public hearing. The date that's identified in the agenda is April 20th, but there's no need to do that. If you want to push it back to May, that's fine as well. We don't need to make that decision tonight either. We have plenty of time to notice that either of those meetings, so making a final decision on when that will be is not required tonight, but just the fact that you will have an additional hearing, and we can take care of the notification from there.
Thank you. Given that this is a public hearing, I would like to open it up if there are folks here who are, looks like I already have some, if you could please state your name, and if you haven't already, before you leave, sign in on the podium back there.
Thank you. I'm Alex Yin from, sorry. I'm Alex Yin from the Winooski School Board. One of the reasons why we know that this waiver has, or this public hearing has come up and this waiver process has gone on is mainly because we need the parking. There is no parking minimum for places like schools, which poses a problem as we move forward with the construction of our renovations in the capital planning project. And so we're encouraging us to kind of move forward or give us an outlet for us to apply for our waiver so that we can move forward on our tight schedule on the of really starting the capital project for the school. So I'm kind of here on behalf of the school board to kind of express those concerns, or if we're going to push it on to May, it poses some construction problems for us, I think.
So to that point, one of the things I should mention is that because you scheduled the hearing, the draft language is eligible to be used. The state statute allows for a period of 150 days from the time the elected body, you all, schedule a hearing. For 150 days after that hearing is noticed, the language that's proposed can be used, and it would be used if a request came forward. So the school, in this case, could take advantage of the parking waiver language prior to it being formally adopted by council.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other public comment? Anyone on the line? So seeing no additional comment, I will now close this public hearing and bring it back to the council for discussion. I would say, given that we have been advised by the zoning administrator and I think based on the discussions at Planning Commission to have another hearing on this, I don't think we need to dig in deep enough to make a decision. But if there are questions or comments that folks want to discuss right now.
I would support moving this, having a second public hearing at a time when we can have more public. I think that would be a good thing.
Yes. Any other questions or comments from council? All right, so no action is needed on this item tonight, and we will bring it back to a future agenda to set a date for that future public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item, going back to the regular items on the agenda, this is an approval for a development agreement with Medi Real Estate LLC for the redevelopment of Lot 70 on Abenaki Way.
Great, thank you. So at your meeting last week in executive session, we went over these documents in detail. They are not attached to your council agenda because until there's an affirmative vote, they are still documents that could be negotiated, but upon execution will be made available to the public. Having said that, I do want to give you you and the public a quick highlight of what is included in these documents. So these documents codify the development proposal that Netty Real Estate put forward in response to our RFP, and the language in it reflects what they proposed. I also should first introduce Doug Netty, who is here in the room, and Bill Niket, who is here with us as well from the development team. So at a high level, this agreement includes the development of a new municipal parking garage, a hotel, and an office building. The development agreement allows the project to move forward with 2 out of 3 of those components. In exchange for Netty Real Estate designing, permitting, and building a parking facility, the city is going to buy that product from them for the $9.7 million that the community bonded last year. And there are lots of provisions in the development agreement about how that will work. And then for the sale of the upper 2 units, the potential office space and hotel, the city will receive a total payment of $700,000 for those air rights. That is the big picture of what is in the development agreement, and we're really excited to get to this point and move it forward, and eager to kind of share with the full community the plans that are coming forward. We think that this meets the goals in the master plan, the goals of the community for a hotel in downtown, as well as more vibrancy with new employees coming to downtown, and is really a win-win for all.
Thank you for that overview. As I recall, general response in our executive session as a council was also positive, that this agreement does move forward with the vision that we have been talking about, that the community supports. And then, we dug into some questions about risk and what the long-term outlook for the project would be. I was satisfied with those answers. I will let you speak for yourselves. I think that we had a good, came to a good place at that executive session. So do you want to open it up now to all of you for any other questions or comments? Also, since we have the developers here. Did you all want to share anything specifically?
Bill, do you want to give a bit of an update for the group?
And just that we really appreciate the attention that we've been able to get from city staff over the last several months. It's a very long history in the city, as some of you know. So I've had occasion to work with a wide variety of administrations over the years, and this keeps up the tradition as far as I'm concerned in terms of folks being really responsive to our requests, and we're really excited to move forward with the project.
Awesome. Good shout out to staff. So are there any concerns from council? I would take a motion to approve the development agreement with Netty Real Estate LLC for the redevelopment of Lot 7D on Abenaki Way.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you for working with us and bringing this to life.
Appreciate it.
They're not going anywhere, there's one more.
Oh, yes, related to, yes. So the next item on the agenda is approval of an Act 250 amendment process for the redevelopment of Lot 7D.
So, Eric, if I can ask you to come up for this one in case there are questions. And I would just note that one of the counselors is calling out that they're having a hard time hearing folks too far away from the computer, so if we can all speak up a bit. So this is a very confusing Act 250 process. So you have seen before you in the last year several requests to co-sign Act 250 permits. And that is done because of the master plan in the downtown. The city is required to be a co-applicant on those. This procedure is a little different in that we are the property owners, so it is actually our application that's going in. In the interest of the timeline that's been established between the city and the developer, We are very eager to get into permitting quickly and understand what issues might arise as part of that process before designs and plans are finalized. So the request before you tonight is to authorize me to sign an Act 250 application on behalf of the project and as the property owner, with the understanding that the council will still hold and retain the rights to have a final review of the design and aesthetic of the project as a whole before permitting is finalized. That's a high-level summary. Eric, do you want to add?
No, I think that's a good summary. I mean, a lot of times the Act 250 amendment process, because all of downtown is under a master plan, it's all permitted through the District Environmental Commission and Act 250. So those amendments can take time, potentially, depending on how they go through the process as a minor amendment or a major amendment. Major amendments have a public hearing with those, so depending on how the process moves forward, it could take some time to get through the state permitting process, which is independent of the local permitting process. So we would still be able to issue local permits while the state process is carrying out, but this would just be a way to expedite some of that state permitting and to identify any challenges that might come up in their process that need to be addressed while we're going through the rest of the process.
So what we're voting on tonight is just to initiate, and there's going to be several other points of contact.
Correct.
Is this going to delay with the easements? How, are the easements going to become an issue with these amendments for Act 250?
Easements, meaning CCV.
CCV,
So that's a good question. I don't think they're going to be an issue with
Okay.
Act 250. Right now, we're exploring kind of parallel options of either having CCV be a co-applicant with us because they will own a piece of the property at that point. They have indicated very strongly to us that they are willing to do a lot line adjustment. We've been talking to them about that for several years. So at some point, because you hold the ultimate authority for taking on or disposing of property, you would have to approve that lot line adjustment, but we can start the permitting process without needing to have accomplished that. And then there are other easements that will be part of the project that will come before you, but don't necessarily impact Act 250.
Any other questions? Public?
Guys are supporting this?
Yeah. Hearing no,
We're excited about this, and our schedule is hoping to break ground this September, so this enables us to move this forward, and so we appreciate your support.
Hearing no further comment, I would entertain a motion to approve the Act 250 amendment process for the redevelopment of Lot 7D.
so moved.
Sorry.
Do you need me to change that language?
Friendly amendment.
Yes.
Can the motion be to authorize me to sign the Act 250 permit with you all retaining that final design review?
Who would like to make that motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Are we done with you for this evening?
Hey, thanks for coming.
Yes, we're done with you, Doug. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you much
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Great.
And thank you for working with us to move things forward.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's more fun than us.
So next on the item is, next on the agenda is a discussion item, an update on Main Street revitalization with John Rocher.
So good evening. This is meant to be just a sort of a brief update for the Main Street project. And really what we're looking to lay out is high-level view of next steps for pre-construction schedule and just another quick overview of the finance model, basically the same sort of finance model that we've been showing, but just kind of reiterating the values that we have in that debt modeling. So just to give you an update on the pre-construction schedule. What we've done, there's a table in your packet, Table A, that lays out what we're proposing basically for the project until we get to the point where we're going out to bid. So what you'll see is there's two schedules listed. One is our project pre-construction schedule, where it's the typical 60%, 90% construction document phase. And then above that is sort of a council review schedule. So what we've laid out is milestones where we expect council will be giving some input. So if all goes well, this time next year we'll be potentially going out to bid, which is pretty exciting. So what we're showing is, from now on, probably about every 3 months, we're proposing a check-in with the council. So tonight really is just overview of bill grant request, which is the next agenda. Next meeting we would expect is June, and that will most likely just be a schedule update. How are we doing? Probably no decision points at that meeting, but just general schedule update with what's going on now and making sure we're on track. Once we get into the summer, probably August, we're going to be getting into 90% design documents. So at that point, we're going to be coming to you with those kind of alternatives of, potentially, looking at cost alternatives. So coming to you for, this is a streetscape alternative that we're proposing. This is the cost, and sort of that a la carte options that we've kind of discussed throughout the project. And once we've kind of gone through that process, that's where we'd start to put together a bid package with construction documents. So what you'll see is, this fall, sometime around October, that's when we get into what are we actually going out to bid with? What's this project going to look like? So with that comes updated financial models. Do we do phasing? Do we do the full project? And we've allocated 2 meetings to kind of discuss that with the council. What's not shown in this schedule overview is, we will be going to Municipal Infrastructure Commission, probably Planning Commission to get some input on some of those features. Obviously outreach is going to be a big part of this project that is built into the schedule. We're just showing kind of where we expect some points for you guys to give us some feedback on. And then once we get through sort of the bid scope items, we're looking at putting a package out to bid for 45 days potentially, and then coming back again in March with a potential bid package to award. That would get us to spring construction. So that's just a very general high level overview of the project and what I think will be, just to give you a feel for what we're going to be asking for in the future during pre-construction. I'll kind of pause there on any schedule questions.
Yeah, I got a question. We've been talking about a phase, how we're going to try to do this in a phase production. Are we going to put out the bid knowing that phase production, or is it going to go out to bid as one whole? Then they award the contractor a job, then we're going to discuss scheduling or phasing?
So that'll all occur during that sort of fall bid scope phase. So we will be able to do both. We were proposing to do a phase project this summer because there just wasn't the time frame to develop full construction documents by this summer. So now that we're looking at next year, we can develop those full construction documents and either go full, pending financing, go for a full project, or do a phased approach. And at that point, we'd be looking at, the Exit 16 project, according to them, the V-Trans project on the circulator, according to them, what developments are occurring, so that those are factors that would play into that phased approach potentially.
So we'd be having that discussion in tentatively what we're seeing is October.
Correct. Yeah.
And have more information on the financial modeling and the status of these other items.
Have we thought about the impact of businesses and residents too? throughout this? I mean, do we have a plan in place, or have we just, I don't remember we discussing any plans for businesses that may suffer or residents that are gonna be inconvenienced because of this?
Yeah, so that's gonna be a huge, and that's one thing I was saying, one thing that's not in this kind of council review schedule, we blocked out a pretty significant chunk of time for outreach, where we're gonna be working with Heather, downtown Winooski, to reach out to those Main Street businesses. We did an initial outreach, but it was just way too early to get that feedback. So once we start getting into construction document phase, that's where we're gonna be reaching back out to those businesses. Because I think at that point, you know, with some feedback from you all, we're gonna have a better handle on what the project's gonna look like and certainty on the schedule. So we can have more meaningful discussion with businesses.
Other questions? Jim?
The CCRPC grant that you put in for, will that align still with this schedule if it is awarded to do that parking study? Or where does that fall in here if it is awarded?
Yeah, so that's a July, the UPWP for the parking grant that Eric is working on. So that would be July start, so that would actually fit in nicely with the 90% documents development. So I don't know, I mean, we won't know what the full scope of that parking study is gonna look like, but at least we'll have some preliminary data to work with this 90% plans.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Well, I'll just say that I really appreciated this update. I think for me personally, I have continually thought, oh, when is our input required? When do we have this phasing discussion? So now having this for my own reference is really helpful. And I think also to help give an update to the community of potentially the timeline could be in the ground next year, and we would be doing outreach further later out this year. Any other questions before we move on?
I'll just talk about the financial model quick.
Sure.
That's okay. So we're showing the financial model again. I think this is probably iteration 13 last time I looked, but good news is it's always getting less complicated and the price tag's usually coming down, so if that keeps going, great. But you know, don't get too attached to these numbers because it's going to change, you know, until we get to actual bid documents. I think the main point is, you know, looking at the sort of values we're showing is what we have always shown for the modeling is a 50% maximum use of the TIF funds. So we're still holding that, and that's one of the primary revenue sources for the project debt. You know, we are projecting some Main Street growth set aside that's market forces, so we just have to keep tabs on what development is occurring on Main Street. Just for some background, that's based on a 20-year build out of Main Street, assuming 40% of Main Street is built out. And that's based on 394 Main Street and 348, those two developments, their actual values. So it's based on some real world data. It's just, you know, it's going to be up to the market. One thing we are still holding is, you know, in these projections is not doing another property tax increase to support this project. So the FY20 property tax funding, that's going into reserve for Main Street, and we're rolling that in. So those are sort of the main revenue offsets. We're also holding, you know, the transportation impact fees, a potential revenue source that we'll talk about in April. So I'm not showing that because that requires a vote and council to implement. But so this is, you know, basically the values we're holding. So, you know, I know the Finance Commission is going to be looking at the TIF, so they'll be providing input. But just to give you an update, you know, how are we paying for this project? And this is strictly for the general fund. So we're also including the grants that we've received to date, 1.139 million on the general fund side. So we're looking at approximately 9.6 million left for debt financing at this point.
Can you tell me a little bit about the 40% growth on Main Street and what that's based on?
So we looked at the corridor as a whole, and we looked at what parcels are, make sense for development. And we kind of used, and that was roughly about 40% of the corridor. And then we took the example developments that have already occurred and what their existing assessed value was prior to development and what their new assessed value was and what that grand list growth equates to. And that's how we came up with the values. So originally we looked at, and that's a pretty conservative model, so there's more than 40% potential development along Main Street, but we want to hold sort of conservative numbers for that revenue offset.
Thank you.
One other comment about this financing model is that it is also not anticipating any increase in local options tax dedicated to this project. And if we have, for example, a hotel in the city, that number will increase, and we have not programmed that in yet to this, even though we have said that publicly that local options tax will be used for capital moving forward. It doesn't have to be this capital, it can be any capital, but that's another way this model is conservative.
Additional questions?
Can I just ask about what the potential for reappraisal, changing the grand list values along the Main Street corridor are? Like, I know it's hard to predict how reappraisal will affect that, but do we anticipate a net neutral effect of that reappraisal on properties valuations along Main Street? Will it increase property valuation? Like, is the gap there larger on average or lower on average in the city?
That is a good question. So it's hard to know how reappraisal will impact that. I think the reality is that citywide property values will be adjusted up. New construction, they're likely not to be adjusted up so much because they were just built, so they're kind of the high level anyway. What will go away is the CLA application of those values. But assessed value aside, what reappraisal doesn't change is how many dollars we're collecting to do municipal work. Our budget stays the same. It's just how that's distributed across the city. So if the council, when we get to this point in a year, decides to use that grand list set aside, it's basically doing our own mini TIF. So if those dollars are coming from Main Street or somewhere else, it's the same dollars that are being raised by the city. That got a little complicated there. Does that make sense, Jim?
Yeah, no, I think I see what you're saying. I guess I just mostly worry about a downward trending pressure on overall property values there, kind of undercutting potential grand list growth when you have that reappraisal. But it sounds like the way you're explaining it, that we're still talking about whatever increment comes up above the existing appraisal values and thus the property taxes.
Right.
So, yeah, that makes sense.
Any more comments?
I mean, I would say congratulations on a no property tax increase debt model for a $9 million project. I think that's, I think it's pretty impressive. So fingers crossed that these all continue to work out. Thanks.
Don't get too far ahead. There's votes involved in the future. Hearing no further comment, we can move on to item E, approval, grant approval for Bill Grant for Main Street. So John will stay with us.
So if this grant comes through, forget that model that I just showed you. So this will be the third application potentially that we apply for. This is a United States DOT build grant. So it's a competitive grant that's for all states. Last year we submitted on this grant. We weren't quite sure where it landed, but we received feedback from DOT sort of after action review, and 666 applications were submitted for this grant. Last year was, I think it was just under $1 billion total funding. The Main Street project ended up in the last, it made it to the last portion of the review, so it was recommended, and it went to the Secretary of Transportation's desk. So 254 applications. After all the reviews of economists and other transportation experts, they weed out other application, goes to the Transportation Secretary's desk for final selection, and she selects 55 of those projects. So that was great feedback for us that this project was well received. It was recommended as a potential project for funding. So we got some great feedback from the DOT on how to improve the application for this year, mainly in the benefit cost analysis portion where economists review it and they looked at, the dollars and cents of how it impacts the community. So we're gonna give it another shot this year with your approval. We put in up to $12 million grant. Last year, I think it was a $13 million grant request for general fund costs. 20% match, so we can use some of that USDA financing on the water and sewer side to potentially match this. So we're looking to keep fingers crossed and put another application in.
Half the work, more than half the work is already done. Just need some revisions, and third time's a charm, maybe. Any questions, concerns from council? I think we
Can I just ask a
voted
clarifying
on this.
question?
Yeah.
The document that we received said the applicable match is 80%, and you're saying 20? So I want to make sure we're talking about 20?
Oh, yeah, it does say 80 in there.
Should be 20. Thank you.
Okay.
Eric, good catch, Amy.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
That did seem kind of high, but
Yeah.
So I would take a motion to approve the build grant for Main Street application.
So move.
Second?
Motion by Mike, second by Jim. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Did you, Amy? I didn't hear you.
aye.
Motion carries, thank you. Next on the agenda is another approval item. This is a job description for the pool attendant. Ray is back with us.
Hello. So as we have been talking about for quite some time, we are still on track for June opening for the pool. In the interest of having some staff members to watch the front desk, we are bringing you this pool attendant job description. These are new positions for us for the city, but these are positions we've talked about throughout the process planning so far. Just a couple details to share here. From a pay rate perspective, we're well within budget from what we've been hearing for numbers, which is great. We are leaving ourselves here in language and just wanted to be upfront in terms of hiring 3 versus 4 staff. Given that these are temporary seasonal positions, we want to have some flexibility. If we've got 4 great people who can work fewer hours, leaving us flexible to go that route versus 3 people with more hours. So again, I think hopefully a fairly straightforward position description. These will be the folks kind of at that front desk. These are not going to be lifeguard staff. Again, that's something we are going to be looking to contract out. So those are some of the overview details there.
And just from a process standpoint, our personnel policies require you to approve the job title, position description, and funding source. You have approved the money for these positions in the FY21 budget. So this is just giving us the authority to move forward with hiring.
Is the purpose the job description?
It's part of the job description, so there are also elements below that are more operationally related, so percentages of time, various, from a sort of OSHA and safety perspective, various tasks that that person may have to do. That typically doesn't come forward to council for approval.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
So there is a more detailed description for reference.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Any other questions or comments? Can I have a motion to approve the job description for pool attendant?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Hal, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Amy, I didn't hear you again.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Last item, this is a discussion item, St. Stephen's lease.
Yeah, last but not least here. So Mike O'Brien and I, who you may have heard of before, who is a member of the St. Stephen's Parish Council, also our former mayor, he and I have been working for quite a while on updating this. We've been handing drafts back and forth, but pretty happy to bring this forward. It's an update of a lease that was originally drafted in 1974 and then readopted in 2003, basically as it had been originally drafted. So it's been a while. It was time to freshen a few things up and just codify a few details here that had been, sort of mutually agreed upon, but never sort of formally written down. So just to kind of high level things that were adjusted in this updated draft, clarifying language around the sale or removal of the building at the termination of this lease should it not be continued moving forward. Changing language that would allow for interior renovations and improvements to the building without diocesan approval. The language before wasn't particularly clear on that. Allowing the city to make rental agreements with the public without the approval of the diocese. That was, again, something we had been doing and had kind of agreed to with a handshake, but hadn't codified in the lease, so we wanted to make that adjustment. And then also just clarifying the maintenance pieces around the parking lot in particular. Again, these are all things that have been agreed to over the years, but never written down in the body of the lease. So in particular, line striping and paving being included in the city's program for road maintenance and paving, but at the cost to the church or to the diocese. So again, I think this gives us some nice clarity moving forward, and both legal counsel for the diocese, Roman Catholic Diocese, and the city reviewed this document and were in support.
Well, and I appreciate the bullets in the memo clarifying for us what the changes are. Are there any questions from council? Seemed clear to me, and we are happy to have this agreement with the diocese and work with the church there to support the senior center. This is just on for discussion. We will see this in a future agenda for approval. Any last questions then? This brings us to the end of our agenda. I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Jim. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.